Good morning, everybody. My name is Jody Janikopoulos. You're here with the Addison Public Library, and Laura Winnie is joining us from DuPage Animal Services. So excited. We're here for part 3 of our 4-part Understanding Animal Behavior series. Very proud of this. And we are actually streaming to YouTube Live, so you can catch it later as well to review one of the many good points and tips and tricks from Laura Winnie. I will let her introduce herself this morning and tell you more about what she does and what's going on at DuPage Animal Services, in addition to our awesome program that she's prepared for us this morning. So we'll see you. I'll be back to do Q&A in about 50 minutes or so, and please feel free to include your questions in the chat, and we will definitely address them anytime. And please revisit the recordings as you like. So thank you so much, Laura, again.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Jody. It's great to be back. So I am the education coordinator for DuPage County Animal Services. Our building, our animal shelter, is located in Wheaton, right off County Farm Road. And today we combine two topics that are very near and dear to my heart. So we're going to talk about pet training 101 and solutions with animal services. It may seem a bit odd to pair those two topics, but unfortunately, a lot of the animals that we see in the shelter could potentially have stayed in the home if the owners and guardians had gone through pet training. So a lot of behavior issues that we see, once they're caught early, they can completely be managed and those animals can stay in the home. We also do a lot of counseling with not only just owners who are considering surrendering their pet, but also people who are adopting from us, and even just the general public on, okay, how can we help this pet fit into our home, fit into our lives, and make sure that everybody's going to live harmoniously. So let me share my screen so we can get started. We are going to talk about the pet training section of it first. So thank you so much for being here. Now, a lot of people do join us when we talk about pet training because they've recently added a pet to their family, or maybe things aren't going quite as well as we had hoped. Trust me, we all have that one animal that is particularly challenging. Even professional trainers have that. So while I am not a professional training, I am in the process of working with our professional trainers at the shelter. So I do know a lot that I'm willing to impart, and I'm always happy to answer questions or even reach out to my coworkers and professionals we work with. So, don't be afraid to ask questions, because trust me, I ask them about my own animals all the time with my coworkers at the shelter. I'm always picking their brain. Okay, how can I mitigate? My one animal, Quincy, suffers from pretty bad anxiety. So what are some ways that I can help him feel more comfortable, and then also get rid of some of those behaviors I don't love that stems from his anxiety? Now, an important part of animal training is understanding that your animal is only going to be as good as their trainer. And typically that's you. So even if you drop off an animal for training, which is not the best recommended way to do it, because ideally you want your animal to learn these behaviors with you in the home so that you can keep that going forward. Some of the basics are nice to get help outside, but you want to be working with a professional trainer. You don't want them to try to do all the work and then, pretend like everything's just going to magically be fixed. This is going to involve you a lot. So it's important to learn everything that you can. The training philosophies and the techniques, understanding behavior. Now, we're going to talk a lot about dogs here, but this can apply to any animal. So just keep that in mind, understanding where these behaviors are coming from, because it doesn't happen in a vacuum. And then understanding how to read your animal's body language. What's happening right before the behavior, what's happening right after behavior can be key to figuring out how to mitigate that behavior. So before we get super into it, I want to talk about some things that we should avoid. Okay, so what should we avoid when we're talking about training? Dominance theory has been very, very popular since the 1940s, an original study done on captive wolves. This idea that we have to be the alpha in our household and we need to teach our dogs to respect our authority. There's a lot of problems with the theory. Basically, the science was terrible that it was based on. It was one study in the 1940s, captive wolves. So we're even talking about a different species of animal. And they took different juvenile male wolves from the wild and put them all together in a zoo and studied their behavior. And zoos in the 1940s, not the best. Basically concrete box, okay? So you're taking unrelated wolves who have never met each other before, putting them in a very unnatural situation, and then basing an entire training of theory on a different species based on what you observe. So that's just a whole bunch of bad science to begin with. Unfortunately, the idea caught on. And we'll talk about why in just a minute. But let's say that this is true. Let's say that dominance theory is true, that there's an alpha dog that controls, alpha wolf that controls all the resources, and then all the way down to the measliest little itty bitty weakling wolf who gets the scraps, the leftovers. Even if that's true, that's wolves. That's not dogs. There's a reason that dogs live in our homes and wolves do not. Okay. Hierarchies and resources with dogs are very fluid. So they did studies in the 1960s looking into this, like, oh, let's study wolves out in the wild, out in nature, in their natural setting. Let's see what happens then. And we found out that there was some hierarchy, absolutely, but it was more of a family structure. So mom and dad wolf, and then, little babies. Mom and dad were in charge because they knew how to do things, just like mom and dad are in charge with little kids in human families. Okay. They're in charge because they know what's going on. And it wasn't a strict, you must obey me. It was more fluid than that. It's just like with our own children. We let them test boundaries, we let them learn from their mistakes, but we don't use force necessarily, and not even recommended to use force at all with training, because it creates so many negative associations. So this idea of dominance has really taken off in the dog training world. And unfortunately, it can see some results, but the results are not as good as other methods of training. So for example, modeling is a way that dominance theory has been. Basically forcing your animal physically into whatever you want them to do, manipulating their body. Prime example, you want your dog to sit, you push on their behind until they're sitting down. So this is the idea of you will comply, you will do what I want you to do. The unfortunate part with that is that, yeah, okay, eventually they get there. But it's like taking an Uber versus driving yourself. The animal isn't in charge of what's going on. The animal doesn't make that connection between the beginning and the end. Just like if I was traveling across the city via Uber, would I get to my destination? Yes. Would I know how I got there? No. Could I do it again on my own? No. So this force, this requirement of pressure, yes, you will get your dog to sit, and after multiple applications, your dog will potentially figure this out. However, you're not engaging their brain. And that is a big, big requirement for positive training. We want to do positive associations with you, and we want the dog engaged mentally because one, that's more rewarding, and two, it ties the behavior better. It's actually a faster method of training once you get into the swing of things. It can also force, when you're using modeling, what's called an oppositional reflex. And this is just true across the board with anything. You push on something, it pushes back. Okay, so you can actually cause injury by trying to force movement in a particular direction, because instinctively, and this is true of us as well, we go backwards, right? So keeping that in mind, We want to avoid this modeling. We're going to talk about some great ways to get behavior that are, one, much more effective, and two, just utilize their brain better, increasing that positive bond. Before you take on any training regimen, you want to rule out any underlying factors. If this is a established pet in your home and they are exhibiting new behaviors, first thing we say, go to the vet. Absolutely check to make sure that there is not a medical reason for this behavior. A prime example of that is litter box problems with cats. You know, cats pretty much train themselves to use the litter box. It's a natural inclination for them to do it. When they stop using the litter box, that's when we tend to have issues. It could be something as simple as they don't like the particular litter, or the litter box hasn't been cleaned often enough. Or it could be something more medically inclined, like arthritis. Maybe it is painful for them to get in and out of that litter box, and so they are choosing not to. So definitely we want to make sure we go to the vet to rule out any health reasons, and also take stock of the environment. Has something changed? Have you changed what litter you use? You know, maybe you got something that was on sale, and Kitty is fervently telling you, I do not like the cheap stuff. This is painful. I don't like it. I'm going to not use this box. I'd rather do something else until the situation changes back. Social changes, adding a new animal to the mix, adding a new family member, human as well, can really change up the dynamics, and understanding what changed, watching the behaviors, watching body language will help you figure out, okay, is this a social reason? Is there a social reason for this behavior change? When you're bringing a new animal into your home, animals need time to adjust because every change is a trauma. Even if it's for the best, even if it's they were in a terrible situation and now they're in a great situation in your home, still change, it's still trauma, because we can't explain to them, oh, that's fine, this is your forever home, yay. So what we need to think about is the rule of 3. So 3, 3, 3. 3 days, the animal is pretty much stressed out to the max, trying to figure life out. This is a brand new situation, brand new people, brand new smells, everything. Just imagine your first day back at school, right? You didn't know where to sit for lunch. You didn't know, okay, is the meatloaf okay to eat, or should I get the hamburger? You know, what's expected of you? Oh, the teacher said something, I don't know what that means. Think of that stress times infinity because of the language problem, right? We can't tell our animals what the expectations are. Instead, the best idea is to just get a routine and stick with it. Over those 3 days, they might be completely shut down. They might be completely amped up as a response to stress. As we get more and more into our routine, as they get used to what is expected of them, and okay, meals are always going to be at this time. Excellent. When they say this word, that means we're going to go outside to potty. Excellent. Okay. Starting on, around 3 weeks, so that second 3, that's when they're going to start to feel more comfortable. You will see more of their individual personality around that time, and you might see some behavior problems around that time because they're feeling more comfortable. They feel more like themselves. So now we're really excited about barking at people out the window, where maybe in the first week we didn't because we weren't sure what the rules were. But now we feel comfortable. We know this is a good place to be. Ooh, I can yell at the strangers out the window. And that's very, very fun. Okay. Now in 3 months, that's when they finally feel at home. So that third 3 months, that's when they finally feel at home. You should have the full spectrum of their personality at that point, and you can gauge which are behaviors that were stress related due to transitioning to the move, or which ones are something that's innate in their personality that we need to work with. When we're looking at a training solution, specifically in regards to problem behaviors, one of the first things we talk about is management. Management is not the same as training because the animal's not learning anything. Basically, management is all about preventative. So if let's say your new dog barks out the window when people walk by, well, we're blocking their view of the window so they can't. Okay, so we didn't train the animal not to bark out the window, because the second those barriers came down, I'm sure the animal would bark again. But we're preventing them from making mistakes, in our opinion, right? We are preventing that behavior so that we can begin to train away. Now, for some of us, management is all you need. Absolutely, you can go further into training, you can go into the learning, but it's a longer road. By managing the situation is resolved. You don't necessarily need to go any further than that. Some people feel it's cheating. However, you're happy, the dog is happy, and your neighbors outside don't think you have a crazy person living in your home. So everybody's happy, okay? And there are many different ways that we can manage the environment to prevent these unwanted behaviors. So for example, resource guarding from other pets when they're eating. Everybody's separated when they're fed, whether that's in crates, whether that's in rooms, whether that's behind gates, just doing that. My particular dogs, I have one who resource guarded his food, not around the animals in the home, but if visitors come. So I cannot hand out treats when I have a visiting dog here, because my dog gets very, very upset about that. Could I train it? Absolutely. Absolutely, I could work with my dog to be okay with getting treats while others are around. But I can also just not give treats when other dogs are around, and that solves the problem. And if I do need to give treats for whatever reason, I separate. So I could absolutely go down that road, but I don't feel the need to. I've already found a solution that works for everybody. So if they are reactive at windows, like I said, you can get an opaque film so they can't see out of it, curtains, blinds, even just preventing them from being in the room where high traffic windows are visible. If they are fearful of new places, stay home. The dog park is not every dog's best friend. That's a very stressful environment, especially for fearful animals. So avoiding those places is going to make everybody a lot more comfortable. If they are resource guarding from humans, give them safe spaces where they can have their stuff, feed them in the crate and walk away. Don't mess with them while they're eating. We wouldn't want someone to mess with us while we're eating. So that's pretty easy concept to understand. It applies to the dogs too. So environmental management is the first step, because when you're doing a training regimen, you definitely want to prevent them from doing the undesirable behavior in the first place, because you want to reward what you're looking for. So we need to prevent them from doing what we don't want, so we have the opportunity to reward what we do want. And rewarding can get a little confusing, because it's important to be consistent with your reward system, okay? And it's important to figure out, does your dog associate you with rewards, with behaviors with rewards, okay? Now, one way to do that, because studies show we have 1 second with dogs, 1 second to mark a behavior that we want, to let them know, yes, that's what we wanted. We wanted you to do that thing. We have 1 second. So you can do 2 different things. A clicker is the preferred method. So just something like this, just makes a little noise, okay? This is really easy to use because it sounds the same whether I'm happy or really mad, as opposed to using my voice. Definitely changes based on my mood, the day, the person. So this is much more consistent and easier for dogs to understand that, oh, you sat. Thank you. That's what I wanted. Okay. You can use a verbal marker. If you have people in your home, you want to make sure that you talk amongst yourselves what that verbal mark will be. For example, my dog with the anxiety issues is afraid of the clicker, so we have to use the word yes. Now, I will caution you, when you pick your word, you don't want it to be praise. Praise is something completely different. Praise is, oh, good boy, yay, 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 that's all I know, yeah, woo. Okay, that's different. You want something short and sweet. Yes, good. Something very positive. Something that you're not going to accidentally say I have problems with that because I will be in conversation with someone, I will say yes, and all of a sudden my dogs are looking at me like, "Ooh, I did something good. Where's my treats?" Okay, so just a little word of caution there. Now, you want to make sure that you pair whatever your marker is, whether it's the clicker or your word, with that reward. You want them to know that this sound means yummy treat. Okay, so the easiest way to do that is it's called charging the marker, charging the clicker, and that's just click, reward, click, reward, over and over and over again. You're not asking for anything, you're just letting them know that that noise means good stuff. Okay, same thing with your word. Yes, reward. Yes, reward. Just over and over until they associate that word with the yummy thing. Now, that can take up to 2 minutes, but I would recommend spreading it out over a couple days. Once they've associated that mark with that reward, then you can go on doing your positive thing. So when you're working with the training, with your positive training, you're going to ask for the behavior. When they do the behavior, mark it, click it, or say yes or good, whatever your word is, and then immediately give a reward. Okay, you want to encourage them that when I ask for something and you do it, good things happen. Okay, because remember, if a behavior is continuing, that means it's rewarding. Jumping up on people, barking at the window, the things we hate, dogs love. They think it's great. So they're going to keep doing it unless you offer them an alternative reward that is also high value. So definitely test your rewards. Some dogs are very food motivated and you can use their kibble, just a daily portion of their kibble. Some dogs are a little bit more, discerning, and they're going to want to be really, really paid for that reward. So test it out. Test out a few different treats. See which one they like the best. Easy way to do that, line up a whole bunch of treats, see which one they go for first. Do it a couple times, rearrange them. Are they constantly going for the little piece of chicken? Okay, that's our reward. That's what we use for training. And that's the only time they get chicken, is when we are training. And even negative things, in our opinion, so a negative consequence like being yelled at, being pushed, being shoved, that can be rewarding. So it's important to do something called incompatible behaviors. For example, we have this person being jumped up on by this dog. He's probably yelling at the dog. The dog is getting attention. Woohoo, that's all I wanted, was this person to acknowledge me. Yay, it's happening. So the best thing for him to do would be to turn around, go away, get away from the situation, get rid of all attention, and then ask for an incompatible behavior, maybe a lay down. And then when they do that, we reward that incompatible behavior. They can no longer jump up because they're being asked to do something different. So how can we even begin to get these behaviors? There are a couple of different ways. They all involve our mark and reward system. There's alluring, capturing, targeting, and shaping. Luring is probably the easiest, along with capturing takes a bit of patience, targeting is a little bit more advanced, and shaping is extremely difficult for a beginner to attempt. So I would caution you, if you are new to pet training, to start off with the luring, capturing, and targeting. Wait until you feel good with those before we go on to shaping. Shaping, we will talk about. It's something that service animals use to master complex tasks, okay? So what is luring? Well, this is using something that the animal wants, a treat, a toy, and basically putting it in front of their face and leading them where we want them to go. This is commonly used to train basic behaviors, sits, downs, stays, comes, things like that. You do need to make sure that you are changing up your reward a little bit when you're doing the lure, because if, let's say, your cat responds really well to pieces of chicken and you do 10 pieces of chicken right in a row, maybe your cat's full or just bored of chicken, not going to be interested. So when we talk about training, I'm not talking about spending an hour right, all in a row. You definitely want to space this out to keep things interesting and also to keep those rewards rewarding. Now, it can be possible that people do have concerns with luring, like, oh, do you mean I'm always going to have to carry treats with me? Like, that's a bummer. Why do I always have to give treats? At the beginning, yes, you should always be giving treats. It is your way of paying your pet for doing what you want. Okay. Just like we don't go to work just for the fun of it. We like that paycheck at the end of it. Okay. We want to make sure that we are paying our animals for doing what we want them to do. Now, you can fade out the lure, and we'll show how you do that in just a minute. But you do still want to intermittently give out the treat. Okay. You might need to use the lure a couple different times depending on your animal's comfort level. Now, the idea that it devalues treats is a big concern amongst people, but as I said before, if we are looking at that preference test, picking what our pets really, really want, and then only using that for training, that helps a little bit devalue treats. And do keep in mind that when you are training, we want to make sure that we're looking at the big picture in terms of their daily diet, because sometimes we need to cut back on the kibble or the wet food or something else to make sure that we're not overloading on the calories. Okay, one, it's not good in the long term, and two, a full pet isn't necessarily going to be as excited about a lure that's food-based as one that's like, oh, well, I only got half a breakfast. Oh, here's the other half of my breakfast. We're doing this now. Great. So just something to keep in mind. Now, when you are using a lure, you want to do it a few times. Make a hand motion that you will continue to use. So this hand motion with your lure is what's going to cue your animal what you want. And we do have a video to show you a little bit about that. Use high value items for harder tasks. So yeah, we can use kibble for a sit because that's pretty easy. But if we're asking for something much more complicated, like a rollover, then we're going to be wanting higher value. It's just like getting paid double for overtime. Okay. When we're asking for something a little bit more difficult, a little bit harder to understand, we up the ante with our rewards. Okay. So let's take a look at this video. The first thing that we can do is just teach your dog, your cat, to follow your hand. That's a perfect way to start that lure. So let's take a look at how she's using that lure. So she is marking and rewarding, feeding the treat that's in her hand when the puppy steps forward. So you can see her clicking right there. And notice that she's holding her hand in a very particular way, and she's keeping it consistent. The important thing is to attract the animal, having it right in front of their face, even letting them nibble on the lure a little bit and then moving away is going to help a little bit. If your animal's a little bit more shy, reward for the littlest of steps. Now, fading the lure, we're making the same hand motion, but we don't have the treat in the hand. But they still get the treat when they finish the thing. And we want to make sure that we mark and then give the treat. So moving on, capturing is another option when we are looking at training. And capturing is getting the thing that they offer naturally. So let's say your dog gets up and gives a little bow, gives a big stretch. That's an easy one to capture. Another one is eye contact. When they look at you, when they naturally look at you, reward that. Because if they're focused on you, then you can tell them what you want from there. Okay. Now, capturing is best for those naturally offered behaviors, because if you are waiting for them to say, jump really high in the air. Well, what if they only jump really high in the air when there's a squirrel in the tree? Then you're going to have to be waiting and waiting and waiting for that behavior to show itself. So it can take a lot of patience, and you really need to be like at the ready or just know when your animal offers certain behaviors. Again, when a dog gets up out of bed and stretches, be right there with your marker and your treats. Okay, so an example of this would be 4 on the floor. So this is a dog stationed in front of you, paying attention, not jumping, not distracted, not running around, just hanging out, which is great because their focus is on you. So she is clicking and treating for the dog being in front of her and just being present, paying attention. So a lot of people would say, oh, well, the dog's not doing anything. Why do I have to treat? For a dog to sit there and be focused just on you is something for a dog, because their natural instinct is to explore around, lay down, find something to do, not necessarily to focus solely on you. So that's a really good thing. She resets it by tossing the treats away, by moving to give the dog an opportunity to offer the behavior again. So that's an excellent way. Again, eye contact is another great way. Anytime your dog looks you, checks in with you, mark and reward. Targeting can be a little bit confusing because you have something that the animal is focused on that then we reward for. So there is a target. So in this picture, we can see a cat is focused on a little stick with a ball in the end. And the task that they're asking is to nose boop the target. This is really great because it can guide an animal through a task. So for instance, an obstacle course. If you place the target, they already know to go nose boop the target. You can place the target throughout the obstacle course and lead them through it. Okay. This is really great for if you want an animal to go to a particular place. That is very, very helpful to have them target trained because they already associate that target with good things. And, oh, okay, now the target is in my crate. So now I go to my crate and I get the good things. It is possible to become dependent on the targets. It can be harder to remove the target, just like with fading out the lure. With our treats, it can be hard to fade out the target to get them to do those more complex tasks on their own. However, there's no need to get rid of the target if they're doing what you want them to do. If you're using a target, for instance, to get them into a carrier, to take them into the car, you don't necessarily need to just immediately train them if you can continue using the target. The important thing is here, guys, is we are looking for ways to make your life harmonious and happy. You don't necessarily need to raise a bunch of lassies, okay? You don't need the dog to get to insane super dog levels of training, as long as you are getting what you need from the training and your dog and you, or your animal and you, are in that happy spot where they know what you want and you can get it when you need it. That's the goal, okay? So when you are doing target training for going into a carrier, going into a kennel, something like that, just keep in mind that we want to make sure that there are also positive associations with the end of the target. For example, if I were to train my cat to go into a carrier using a target, but every single time she went into the carrier, we went to the vet, that's not going to be a happy conclusion for her. She is going to start to associate that carrier, that target, with the vet. And I'm going to lose value for my target. She's no longer going to see that as a positive thing. So just keep that in mind. And I did mention that this can be applied to any animal. So here we have some target training with a chicken. So we are asking the chicken to peck the target. You see she's lining up, she's getting her sights on it, and adorable little hop there, click, and then she gets some tasty mealworms as her reward. Okay, so it can work with any animal. It just takes a little bit of patience. And again, associating that target with good things. It's amazing how curious animals are, so they will naturally go and investigate things. It's very easy to reward them for stepping towards it, smelling it, pawing it, anything like that. Once you get their interest in, then you can only reward for the action you want. If you're looking for that nose boop, you know, okay, then sniffing it isn't enough. They have to actually touch, and then we start to reward for that. So it is a process. Going along with that, shaping is the last method that I wanted to talk to you about working with our pets. Again, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it because it is a fairly complex training method. It requires breaking down the behavior that you want into smaller and smaller increments, and then training each increment at a time. So for example, one of my coworkers trained her dog to back up against a wall and do a handstand, which is really cool. But it took a lot of shaping. First, she had to teach back up, then put the back legs up on a level, then a higher level, then up onto the wall. So it was each step was trained in the progression, and it took several weeks for this to happen. So shaping is not something that can be learned overnight. However, it does really engage their brain. If you think back when you were in school and you had like a really big test, how exhausted you were at the end of the day because you used your brain a lot. This happens with our animals as well, because we're not forcing them into a behavior, we're letting them do trial and error to figure out what it is we want. So one of the methods is 100 things to do with a box, which is why I have a picture of a dog in a box here. So first, we train the dog to be interested in the box. So walking towards it gets a treat. Smelling it gets a treat. But if we're actually looking for them to get into the box, first, maybe we train them to put their foot in the box, then both front feet. Then we hop in. So it's a process, okay? We want to make sure that we're not overcomplicating it though, because it is possible to break these behaviors down into too many steps. That can be very frustrating. It requires a lot of patience and discipline from the trainer, and also understanding when your animal is getting frustrated. Like, well, I was doing the thing and I was getting rewarded. Now I'm not getting it and I don't know what this person wants. Being able to read body language, realizing when, okay, maybe we need to take a step backwards in the training and focus on that before we move up. You also want to make sure that you're ready to attempt shaping. If you are, start with a designated plan, something that a professional trainer has already created, and work that before you start looking into what behaviors you want to create and what plans you want to create for your dog. Now, we definitely want to set ourselves up for success when we are training. So understanding that animals are amazing at reading body language, including our own. So we want to make sure that we are providing a fun atmosphere for our animals. You know, we're nice, loose, wiggly. We're not all tensed up. We're not in an unhappy place ourselves. And how are we relating to our animal? Are we being threatening in our body posture by leaning over them? Are we, you know, are we intimidating? We're very, very tall for our animals. So maybe getting closer down on their level will be easier. Are we walking up to them directly, making eye contact, moving with purpose? That can be very threatening for a lot of animals. Are we handling them in a way that makes them uncomfortable? Just like this cat in this picture. If they are already tense around us, it's not a good learning situation. Okay, we want them to be relaxed. We want them to be happy in our presence, and understanding how we interact with our animals even before training begins is going to help us have a better training session. Also, understanding when our animals are stressed out. So some common things: stretching when there's really no need, like they haven't been sleeping, or yawning when they haven't been tired, doing a little lip lick, just a really quick, you know, tongue flick to the nose, turning their head away, turning their body away. These are all ways that they indicate stress, and understanding that, you know, maybe this has been too much. We've gone a little bit too far. It's done. Let's end on a positive note. Ask for a behavior you know that they can do, so that we can end the session on a happy note and move on and come back later. Also, tired pets are happy pets. So making sure that we are reducing stress in our animals by providing them enrichment. Enrichment is a way for animals to express natural behaviors in a safe and happy way. For example, foraging, sniffing, things like that. They do engage the dog's mind. Foraging is a natural behavior for anyone that's ever had a dog steal pizza off the sidewalk, like me. Doing something as easy as a snuffle mat, where they have to go through with their nose and all the different little pieces of fabric to find their food. It takes an activity that in my household takes about a minute if they're eating from their bowl, and it lengthens out that time to several minutes. And also they're sniffing, which reduces stress. Just the fact of getting more oxygen into their body reduces stress. And also it's fun. So that's going to be really rewarding for them as well. When we think about exercise with our animals, we often think of just the physical exercise and getting out and running with the dog, you know, making sure that our cat is chasing the mouse. Well, there's also the mental aspect of that as well. And like our test example, sometimes mental exercise can be much more exhausting and rewarding even than physical exercise. So if you're out with your dog on a walk, one of the ways to combine those is to let them sniff as much as they want. Let them guide the walk. Don't be so focused on the amount of space that you cover, rather how engaged they are with their environment. That's going to help. And never be afraid to reach out for help. There are always going to be some behaviors that are beyond what we can do at home. So we can talk to our veterinarians. They've had specialized training, and again, they can rule out any physical concerns or medical concerns that might be at play here. And also trainers, behavior consultants, and behavioral veterinarians. These are specifically certified, trained in helping manage behavior and figuring out, one, what's causing it, and two, what do we do about it? What do we do in our homes? What do we do with our person? What do we do for our animal? What can we give them to do instead? So these are great resources. And at DuPage County Animal Services, we do have a list of these professionals in the area that we are always happy to share with pet owners who need additional support. And you can also just reach out and give us a call. So I do want to talk a little bit more about what we have available at DuPage County Animal Services. A lot of people just think that we're the proverbial cartoon dog catcher, and that's all we do. But we do a lot more, including providing information for the public. We're really focused on community-based sheltering. So the idea of animal control has changed a lot over the years, from the dog catcher to, okay, now we need to prevent some problems. Now let's work with our community so that our community can solve problems before they start. And it is our goal to have owners keep their pets. We want that. We want pets to be in the home with their owners. That's the best place for them to be. We don't actually want animals to come into the shelter because it is a very stressful environment. So we do work with the public to try to find other solutions, rehoming with rescues, or even just finding families who are looking so that the pet can go directly from one home into another without ever having to go through the stress of coming to the shelter. For those animals in need that do come to the shelter or are lost and are brought to us, we definitely do adopt out these animals and work with our rescue partners. And we also work with the public to make sure that we are keeping healthy pet population by working with veterinarians, rescue groups to help offer spay, neuter options to the public. We do have limited resources. We are self-funded. We're not actually taxpayer funded. So with any government organization, we are looking to get the most bang for our buck here. And we want to make sure that we are efficiently using those limited resources that we have to the best use for our community, for the public. That is our goal. So what do we do? Well, we are an open admission animal shelter. So that means we will take in everything. and I mean everything domestic. So recently we had a peacock. Right now we have some chickens. We have guinea pigs. We had some sugar gliders recently. So we will take in all domestic animals. Now, we do get the question, are we a kill shelter? The proper term is open admission. So we will take in an animal even, let's say, after it's been hit by a car and is on death's door. So yes, humane euthanasia is an option for us, but we don't euthanize for space reasons. We look at quality of life and public safety. And unfortunately, some of those, quote, no kill shelters, they are closed admission shelters, which means they turn away the animals that then come to us. So, and even those shelters do use humane euthanasia for the same reasons, for quality of life, health concerns, or for public safety concerns. It's just that they have to keep it at a certain threshold, 90%. We're at 87%, which is amazing for an open admission shelter. And that percentage is animals that come into our shelter who are then homed, found, transferred outside the shelter. So 80% of the animals that come into our shelter then go on to find other homes somewhere else. Now, we are also in charge of preventing and controlling rabies throughout the county through bite investigations, tag and registration, and rabies testing. We do rescue and shelter stray and unwanted animals. We provide veterinary care for all of the animals in our facility and for those in our foster care homes as well. And we do offer spay neuter clinics and other wellness clinics for low income families to help keep down overpopulation for our animals. And just like with our program today, we do provide educational opportunities to better the lives of the animals in our community, as well as the people in our community. So our tagline is saving animals and serving people. So on the animal side of it, we do get homeless animals in here, whether they are owner surrenders or they are lost and strays. When we have strays come in, our goal is to reunite them with their family. So we check out the ID tags, we do microchipping. As you can see, one of our animal caretakers is looking for a microchip with this chocolate lab so that we can reach out. I will say microchips are the best way to ensure your animal will come back because microchips can't be lost. So make sure that your animals are microchipped, make sure that contact information is kept up to date. Animals can be surrendered for many different reasons. It is not our job to judge. It is our job to get the best information we can about the animals to help them find a new home. And as I mentioned, the best way to have an animal get its way back to you if they are lost is that microchip. So I do want to show a clip about Lola. Lola was a lab that was lost for 3 years from her family. Someone in the community worked very hard to build up her trust and was able to bring her to our shelter, scan the microchip, and reunite her with her family. So this video here, you can see she started sniffing and she recognized the smell of her owner. And it was a very, very happy reunion after 3 years. So definitely make sure your animals are microchipped because they're the best way to get reunited. We also have foster homes that work with us, our volunteers. They are invaluable because some of these animals, I mean, all animals are going to do better in a home than in a shelter, but some especially show. The little babies definitely need more attention than our shelter staff, unfortunately, is able to provide because of the number of animals we have in the shelter at any given time. Any animals dealing with behavioral challenges or special needs medically are going to do better off in a foster home, whether with us or through a rescue partnership, to make sure that they get more of that one-on-one attention that they need. We do long and short-term fostering because even a field trip out of the shelter is going to help reduce that animal stress and make them overall healthier. Reducing stress is always very, very important for us. On the flip side of that, we work with our rescue partners to provide them resources, so educational materials, as well as being a repository for donated items that they can utilize. There is a misconception that the dog catchers take animals, throw them in cages, throw the key away and forget about them, but that is not true here, not true most places anymore, because we want to make sure that these animals are mentally healthy to the best of our ability. So we work with training and enrichment on them. One, to make them more adoptable. Animals that know some basic behaviors, especially coming when they're called, sit, stay, things like that. It's easier to adopt them out. But also, it's fun for them to engage in these behaviors. So we have a foraging box here for Spot that he's really enjoying. And it helps relieve that stress. It really, really does. And then once those stress levels go down, it helps us evaluate the animal so that we can look for a better fitting home for them to make sure that they're going to be a good match. And the adoption option is always our favorite thing at the end, getting those great matches and sending our animals out to their forever families. They go into those families with a health check that the people can then turn over to their own vets. They're fully up to date on their vaccinations. They have those microchips. They've been had evaluation for their behavior, and they're also spayed and neutered to make sure that we don't have any accidental litters once they go into an adoptable home. We have additional resources that we provide for some of our special needs animals. So our Underdog to Wonder Dog program comes with virtual training sessions with a certified dog trainer to just provide extra support for maybe a dog who's leash reactive, who barks a lot at other dogs when they're on the leash, or maybe they guard their food a little bit too protectively. So getting those families hooked up with someone who can lead them in the right direction. First couple sessions are free, and then they can choose to continue on or not. It's up to them. We also have a working cats program for animals that aren't quite feral, but they're not quite house cats either. They're not quite lap cats. So they need something in between where they can be protected by people, but not necessarily expected to become cuddle monsters. So our working cats program sees to the special needs of those particular animals. Our bashful buddies are also cats who maybe they came from a very quiet home, lived there for a really long time, and they're just not used to strangers, different people. So they take a particularly long time to warm up. So that Bashful Buddies program is more meant to manage the expectations of potential adopters and providing them guides on how to make sure that these animals feel comfortable in their home and helping them understand what that's going to look like. We also do serve people, of course, in the office. We do that rabies investigation and the registration and the bite investigation. So it is very important to report any and all animal bites, simply because we want to make sure that everybody's staying up to date on their rabies compliance. It is the law. Animals need to be vaccinated against rabies. And because of that, the US has very, very few human fatalities versus countries that do not require domestic animals to be vaccinated. So it's really all about public safety and public health with those bite investigations, and especially when we're looking at animals that maybe need a little bit more management in the home to make sure that everybody stays safe. Okay, we are not in the business of going and snatching dogs off people's porches just because someone reported a bite. Okay, that's not what we do. Instead, we want to provide support for that owner to make sure that an incident like that is not repeated and to make sure that they have the support that they need. We also provide spay-neuter vouchers to low-income families and individuals so that they can get the medical treatment that they need and prevent any accidental litters from happening. It's funded through Anna's Law, which is throughout the state, and it's a fabulous program. So if you know anybody, the application is right on our website. In the field, we do respond to sick and wildlife calls in unincorporated DuPage County. Incorporated, like if you're in the town of Wheaton, Naperville, that's your local police department's jurisdiction. Our jurisdiction is unincorporated DuPage County. We will come out and help law enforcement partners, though, when asked if they have a wildlife call that they don't feel comfortable dealing with, or emergency situations, say that there are animals in the home and there's going to be an arrest, or maybe there's a potential hoarding situation that people are concerned about, then that's times when we partner with law enforcement to help out as well. And I am partial because this is my jam, but education. We provide information to residents of all ages through our tours, through our outreach programs, through webinars just like this one, and through workshops both on and off site. We are still mostly off site at the current time being because of CDC guidelines, and we are hoping that towards the end of the year we'll be able to welcome people back onto our campus for on-site programming. And even on our website, we have the resource library on our website to provide pet owners with guidance on what they need. So choosing the right animal, finding pet-friendly housing, getting resources for those low-cost veterinary practices, it's all right there. So definitely check out the website to see if there's anything. But as always, you can contact me directly if you have any questions. That's what we're here for. We are here to be a service to the public. That's why we are animal services. So if you have questions, we are always happy to help, answer to the best of our ability, and then pass along contact information if there's another agency that can help out better. So that being said, you can always reach me at humane.education@dupagecode.org. But Jody, if there's anybody that has any questions now, I'd be happy to take them.
First of all, let me say that you are a wealth of information and you really truly do serve. That was an amazing presentation.
Thank
I
you.
wish I could have stared at the screen the whole time, but I will definitely be revisiting the information that you provided
And
today on
we
our
can
YouTube
make the slides available again
Great.
for the participants, just so that they have the information.
Wonderful. Thank you for doing that. Yeah, I do have a question. What is the most common type of dog breed at the animal shelter?
That's a great question. Now, we do get all kinds, but typically pit mixes are one of the most common that we've seen, or even just those, we're not quite sure what they are, mixes. We do get a lot of those in, typically because it is harder for those breeds to be placed in rescues, also because of discriminatory rules and regulations. Those owners have more difficulty when they are moving, finding housing that is friendly to those types of animals. But amazingly enough, dogs tend to take up they're the smaller of the populations that we have at our animal shelter. Our biggest animal population is cats, especially right now. It is kitten season. So all the stray cats are all having babies, and then a few months later, those babies are having babies. So we do have a very high cat population at the moment and typically throughout the year. And the second most populous animal at the shelter is also rabbits. So we're a few months removed from Easter, and people have realized that the cute little ball of fluff that they purchased or adopted it around Easter time takes a lot of work, and possibly more than they were led to believe at the time of purchase. So we definitely also see a lot of rabbits throughout the year, but especially right now.
I learned so much about rabbits with the last presentation. I really had no idea about a lot of the animals that you covered, that there was way more to it than, to owning and sheltering those animals than maybe people do expect. I have a question personally, and I don't know if you covered it, so my apologies, but I would always consider adopting an older animal. Could you just, is it different to adopt an older dog or cat in the adoption or fostering process? And what can we do to help those kinds of animals? I'm always concerned that you would incur more vet bills.
So that is a potential with any animal, including ourselves. Medical costs tend to go up, but there are perfectly healthy senior animals. Maybe it's a question of the proper diet.
Okay.
Maybe in the previous home, it just wasn't enough preventative care provided to the point where it got to a head. So that has happened recently. We had a cat come in who, as it got older, was maybe not as flexible as it used to be, so it was having trouble grooming itself. Had the owner been able to brush or groom and keep that up, then there probably wouldn't have been a problem. As it was, though, this particular owner had multiple small children and the animal came from another family member. They were not able to keep up with that coat maintenance to the point where there was matting and some other difficulties that then required medical attention.
Oh.
So not every senior animal that comes into us is a terminal case necessarily. Sometimes it's just knowing what they need to prevent problems. Again, that proper diet, or maybe it's a certain medication, something like that. And that's one of the great things about our shelter is we do have a veterinarian on staff that evaluates all the animals and can provide that guidance to transfer that information over to your own vet.
Perfect. Yes. And that's the other thing I was wondering is, and again, maybe it was covered, but when you are looking to adopt an animal from the shelter, have they received all of their vaccinations? They're up to date with everything, of course.
Yep, absolutely. Yep, every animal. Yeah, spayed and neutered, microchip. We even do the registration for you, so you don't have to worry about that paperwork aspect of it. And also, we a lot of times do behavior evaluations so that you can get an idea of, okay, well, this animal is a little bit more shy around men, but does great with females. This animal was in a foster home with children and did fabulous. Now, we can't always provide every single piece of information, but we are trained in watching animal behavior, so it gives us an idea. For example, if we have a dog that gets really excited about the squirrels when they're being walked around the shelter, may not be the best fit for an animal that has small mammals or cats, because their prey drive, their hunting instinct is very, very high. So that's something that we can say, well, we haven't seen them around cats. However, they're really interested in furry small things. So may not be the best fits.
It just seems like you guys are so helpful with the adoption process and so thoughtful. Your social media is so impressive and sweet, of course, but definitely something that, I think that the public needs is that good advice and that good preparation, and to do their homework as well, maybe before, adopting, is to make sure that the breed is the right fit or what have you. So
absolutely.
Laura, you're just a gem. Thank you so very much.
Great. Thanks so much, Jody. And we'll see you next week, right?
For sure. Looking forward to next week. It's going to be great. What is it next week?
So next week is talking about common behavior concerns with cats and dogs and what to do about them.
That's going to be terrific. I really am looking forward to it. This has been a wonderful series and full of information. Everybody, just so you know, Laura has provided slides from the program last week and is going to again this week. If you need anything, don't hesitate to post a comment or email me through Addison Library. You can just put a general email and it will be forwarded to me. But definitely don't hesitate to reach out to Laura anytime. She's obviously in service to the community in such a huge way. And we definitely will do our best to continue broadcasting with you and hopefully even get it more available to a wider audience. So thank you again so much.
All right. Thank you so much, Jody. Have a great day.
Talk to you soon.